Welcome to Making Capitalism Sustainable on TrueChat. Reasoned solutions to economic and educational issues facing the nation. From the CED studios in Washington, D.C., here's your host.
Thank you for tuning in. I am Mike Petro, Executive Vice President at the Committee for Economic Development, and thank you so much for tuning in today. You know, in 2017, CED launched the Advancing Women in Corporate Leadership Initiative, which seeks to encourage corporations to increase female representation in leadership positions. Now, as a part of this effort, CED is conducting a series of podcasts that focus on the experiences of women in leadership roles and practical steps both women and companies can take in advancing women in corporate leadership. Now, today I'm here with Janice Ellig, who, among other things, is a CED trustee, but she's also the CEO of the Ellig Group, a leading executive search firm, to discuss how she and her company are helping to increase gender diversity on boards and in C-suites across various industries. Hello, Janice. It's great to have you on our show.
Well, I am delighted to be here, Mike, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on TrueChat.
So let's just jump right in. And, you know, more than a fifth of the 3,000 largest publicly traded U.S. companies don't have one woman on the board. And in the Fortune 500, only 20% of the seats are held by women. Being that we are now in 2018, why hasn't this gained more traction, Janice?
Mike, that is the big why. And everybody asks, including the CEOs and board directors that I've interviewed, who do have over 30% or more women on their boards. And they are, they're there. So they're looking at their colleagues and say, why aren't you there across all sectors? So if you turn to a survey that was done by Deloitte in 2017, it's the Board Diversity Survey. It's seeing and is believing. It makes the picture shockingly clear. And Mike Fucci, the chairman, says in the beginning of that survey that, and I'll quote him, specifically, this survey reveals that while executives believe in the benefits of diversity among board members, many have a difficult time defining it and developing practices for promoting it. Furthermore, then the survey goes on, when you read through this, and it is shocking, that while 90% of the boards and directors want diversity, less than 50% have a process for acting on it. So therein lies the issue, and part of that issue is also that, as the survey reveals, that 95% of the boards agree on the need for diversity, but only 16% see that lack of diversity as a top problem. So I look at this and I say, if you don't recognize a problem, it's not going to be a priority. And you look at the boards, most of them, the S&P 500, Fortune 500, have at least one or two women on their boards. So the majority of boards have one or two women. So many say one and done, two and through, three or free, when it should be four or more. And so you can get to parity. So it's a mindset and it's a lack of priority. And that's the why.
Well, obviously, this is not something that's going to correct itself. I mean, I think we all know that by now. And, you know, there's a lot of different approaches about achieving parity. And of note is the fact that California legislators may mandate having a woman on their boards. I mean, do you think that's a mandate is an effective way to increase diversity on boards?
Well, I've never been a proponent of quotas. I've really been a proponent of aspirational goals, timetables, targets, meeting milestones. But I will say that given we've been moving at 0.5% a year since 1995, going from 10% women on boards to just over 20% in 2017, 0.5% a year, that's glacial. So while California is taking a lead on this, other states may as well. I'd like to see this go through. I'd like to see what will happen in a test case and them putting on qualified women and making progress by 2019, 2021, as they have laid out. So I'm not opposed to this. I think it will also be a signal that the time is now. And I think it'll be a signal to CEOs that we don't need legislation. We can do it on our own. But here's a state that's taking the lead. So while I would not have been a proponent in the past, I would say, let California take this lead. Let's see where it goes. And maybe the others will not have to legislate it, but that CEOs and board directors will really accelerate the pace of change for women in the boardroom, and gender as a proxy for diversity overall for people of color and other diverse issues.
Well, as you know, the CED position for several years has been not to mandate this, but I agree. I think with the slow pace in achieving any kind of parity here, I do think there are some who are saying, well, let's see what happens with this California model. Let's see whether or not this achieves parity. So I do think that there are some shifting views on this issue. What are some of the actions that companies that are members of CED, for instance, can take on this journey toward parity? I know a lot of these companies want to do the right thing. What are some of the actions they can take?
Right. So I think there may be 5 steps that companies can take, and they're not onerous. And again, nothing happens overnight. I really want to stress that. I really think that if you take a longer view on this issue and build bench strength, you can get to parity. And I would say companies could get to parity by 2025. So number 1 is all of your slates, all boards, when they're going out, slates should be 50% of highly qualified women. The other 50% could be other diversity and white men. But I think the slate should be half women because that's the population. Number 2 is to open the aperture. Go beyond the CEO title. There are many women who are running companies. They're entrepreneurs. They have a specific expertise, maybe in the sciences that are applicable to the board. So open the aperture. Don't just go looking for current or former CEOs, and don't go looking for the same names over and over again. Number 3 would be to have aspirational goals with a time frame that by 2020, by 2025, by 2030, we will get to parity with regard to gender and then diversity overall. And then 4 would be your process in terms of what CED, which I love, has promoted over the years. Mike, you and Steve Odland have done this, is every other one. So have a process. So this year, if you put on a man, then with the next opening, you should be putting a woman in. Or if you have 2 openings, then one of those should be going to a woman. So the process for putting on a board director should be every other one. And then 5, to have CEOs and board directors sponsor women for boards, and for CEOs to look at their colleagues and see who have they sponsored for a board. Because when you get the stamp of approval where a CEO has sponsored a woman, he or she has seen them in the boardroom and they know that they're board ready. So those 5 action steps, slates of 50%, opening the aperture, aspirational goals, a process for the director of every other one, and the sponsorships, I really think can get you to having parity by 2025.
Before we continue today's conversation, I want to remind our audience that we always want to know if you have any ethical concerns with today's episode, because it's your job, the people, to keep the media responsible. So if you have an objection you'd like to voice, you can always email us at ethics@truechat.org. And additionally, don't forget to engage with us through social media by tweeting at truechat.org or at CED Update. Now we're back with Janice Ellig, and I just had an additional few questions here. Is there any hard evidence that enhancing diversity on a board can impact a company's financial performance?
Yes, there is. And I think you can look at many surveys that have been done over the years. 2015, MSCI analyzed more than 4,000 global companies and found that companies with at least 3 women on their board achieved higher return on investment, ROE, and earnings per share over the ensuing 5 years than most with 0 women. A Peterson Institute survey of nearly 2,000 publicly traded companies in 91 countries across all sectors showed that organizations with 30% female leaders were more likely to add 6 percentage point to net margins. That's female leaders, so in the C-suite. But then there's McKinsey and Company. Global research of 1,000 companies across 12 countries showed that gender diverse companies with diverse executive teams posted higher net margins. The list goes on in terms of surveys. But, beyond the financial, you have to look at reputational. You have to look at what employees are looking for. You have to look at your consumers, your shareholders, in the communities in which you operate. That this is how you're reflecting your company by having a more diverse board and C-suite. And I would also say that more heterogeneous groups, as noted in Scott Page, professor at the University of Michigan, wrote in his book, The Difference, more heterogeneous groups that are less skilled make better decisions than more homogeneous groups. Now, this is interesting because you're looking for companies to make better decisions, and to be more innovative. Well, that comes from more diverse groups. So I think the evidence is all there from a financial perspective, a reputational perspective, and from being more innovative.
A lot of times we hear executives contact us and they raise the concern of they're looking for diverse candidates for positions. They can't seem to find them. How can companies effectively find qualified board or, for that matter, C-suite executives?
Right. So, PwC has done multiple studies over the years, and when they've looked at asked directors, where do you find your new directors? They say over 90% say they come from our community. Well, if they come from your own community, since 80% of S&P 500 boards are men, you're probably going to get more men. So I say there are many databases out there. The Women's Forum of New York has a database where CEOs have sponsored women, and we have now over 225 in that database where CEOs have said, this is a board-ready woman. That database is free of charge at the Women's Forum of New York website. But we've also exported that information onto Equilar's database, so you can get it in either website. The NACD has a website. BoardList has a website and database. So there are many, and Catalyst has a database, if you're a member there. So there are many databases out there. And if you're using an external search partner to work with you, I think you need to make sure that they look at these various databases that are out there. And then when they present slates to a board, they should be highly diverse. But when you're selecting a search partner, you should look for somebody who has a long-term reputation of placing highly diverse candidates onto the board and into the C-suite. And what I mean by that is not that they've been placing 20 or even 30, because the average is 36% of women were placed on boards last year, but more like 40 and 50%, because that's what we have to get to if we're going to get to parity by 2025 or even 2030. I'm proud in my company that over 85% of our placements over a 5-year period have been women and diverse candidates. Yeah, you have to be committed to this. You have to be committed to it.
That's a great track record. I mean, one of the things, Janice, that you also ought to be proud of that I'd like for you to just talk a little bit about is this Breakfast of Corporate Champions that when you were president of the Women's Forum of New York, you helped create. And this is a big event that occurs in New York, and it's a sizable event. And when you created this, what was your vision there? What did you hope to accomplish?
The initial one was in 2011, and it's part of our corporate board initiative. And my view was that if I was going to, while running my executive search firm, if I was going to be president of this organization, and I think, Mike, at about the same time I was joining the CED too, and you had many studies about accelerating the advancement of women. So it all played into what I wanted to do, which was to put a light on the lack of women in the boardroom, but to do it in a positive way. Rather than shame or blame, it was to fame those companies that were really making a difference. And you've participated, CED has participated at these breakfasts. So we do them by NELA, 2011, 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2019, November 7, 2019, we'll do our 5th Breakfast of Corporate Champions. The objective of the Breakfast of Corporate Champions is threefold. One, it's to convene CEOs, board directors, and top executives who are accelerating change in their boardrooms and to honor them. And next year, it'll be those at 30%. Number two, to have panels to discuss the issue and how to solve this problem. What are the solutions? How did these companies do it? And three, to get CEOs to sponsor women who are board ready and to get them into our database, which I said, again, we also have in our database in Equilar. And then this really helps to get women into the network of where boards can go when they're looking for highly qualified women. It's not, magic. It's really over time, really building up these companies. And we're very proud of what we've achieved with the BCC and working with the CED. And we agree with you. Every other opening should be filled by a woman. So I hope everybody will come to the next Breakfast of Corporate Champions, November 7, 2019. And we get over 650 executives at Cipriani, 42nd Street in New York City. So it's quite impactful.
Yeah, no, it is a wonderful event. We've been proud to be a sponsor. So clearly, diversity inclusion is a top priority for you. I mean, you've got as a 100% female-owned, woman-led business. How are you impacting your clients and candidates you represent? Obviously, you're doing a stellar job and attracting diverse candidates, but how are you impacting your clients and candidates you represent?
So I have a great team, which also includes my global network because I'm a member of IIC Partners, a global search consortium. So we're in 33 countries. But what I think we do best is we provide our clients with highly viable choices, both in the boardroom and in the C-suite. It's easy to produce a slate of Caucasian men. But it's not easy to really have a track record where over 85% of your board placements and 80% of our C-suite executives are women and diverse candidates. So it means we have to go into new pools of candidates and really source the market, and really present slates of candidates who are highly diverse, but immensely qualified for what our clients are looking for. And again, it's listening to the client about what they need and never, ever compromising on the qualifications. Never. So our clients have choices, and therefore we enhance their boards and their C-suites with outstanding talent. And, we're really proud of that.
Lastly, I understand your tagline is reimagining search. What does this mean?
So Ellig Group, my legacy company, actually started 40 years ago. I came to the search industry 17 years ago from corporate America. Last year, my partner, one of the founding partners, decided to retire. And I wanted to then reposition our company to go beyond our core executive search services by doing three things. So number one was to have a new technology that provides clients with a 24/7 client portal. So on Sunday night at 10 o'clock, you can find out what a search is doing, how it's going, what candidates said going into a client portal. So that was number one. And number two was to include in our search fee for doing a search, a 90-day onboarding and coaching service so that really candidates could get our services in terms of helping to assimilate them into a company, whether it be a large company, a small company. Some have onboarding and coaching, some don't, and some really need that help. So that was the second thing we were expanding on. And the third was to add strategic partners who could enhance the executive search process and practice, things that we don't necessarily do. So I have, and it's all on my website, so I have a strategic partner who's in data analytics, another who does management development and team training, another who's in marketing and individual branding. And of course, our global network of executive search consultants overseas with IIC partners. So our clients' needs are changing, and we need to provide expanded offering. And that's what we're doing by reimagining search. And it's really working so well. And our clients are really happy with all that we're doing. And we look to be in this for quite a number of years ahead.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you, Janice, for joining us today. As always, we cannot thank you, our audience, enough for tuning into TrueChat. But did you know that you could join the conversation on our app or website, truechat.org? If you already listen to podcasts on iTunes or Stitcher or some other platform, you can also subscribe to our shows there. For Making Capitalism Sustainable on TrueChat in Washington, D.C., I am Mike Petro with the Committee for Economic Development. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Making Capitalism Sustainable.
Looking for responsible media? Listen on demand to politics, sports, and more with the TrueChat app or at truechat.org. Beyond the horizon, there is trustworthy media at TrueChat.